Welcome back to Roundtail Restoration, everybody. My name's Chris. Next to me here is the gearbox for my Triumph TR4. You can see that there's nothing in it. So to get there, however, you got to take some stuff apart, obviously. You got to take the clutch fork and cross shaft out and all that kind of good stuff. And there's a little bit of differences between the newer overdrive transmission that I have and the older gearbox that's originally out of the car. So stick around. We'll see how it's done. Thanks for watching. Let's get it sorted. As you can see, I have two transmissions here. The one here to my left is the overdrive transmission that I picked up, and then one to the right is the one that came out of the car. The one on the left here is serial number starting with 69,000, CT 69 something. This one over here is original to the car, I do believe, CT 38 something. I'm waiting on parts for the overdrive, so I was going to just start ripping apart the transmission, and I wanted to remove the clutch fork, and I was unable to. And I'll zoom in here and I'll show you why I think that's true. Close up here, this is the clutch operating shaft that goes across there. And then you got the clutch operating fork. And essentially what this does is that one end of the shaft over on this side connects to the slave cylinder. And when you depress the clutch pedal, it will allow you to engage or disengage the clutch using the throwout bearing. So in the fork is connected. There's a bolt at the bottom here. There's a little area where a bolt would go in and it bolts into that operating rod. And I guess it's notorious for breaking that bolt. And in this case, it appears that it has broken, but instead of breaking clean, it's broken not so much. And essentially what you would do is you take that bolt out and then drive the shaft out from the right or the left over here and just kind of drive it through. Well, I'm unable to do that because of the way that bolt broke. It's running into the clutch fork, all the remnants of it, and I can't drive it through. So obviously that's not going to work for me, so I want to go over and grab my transmission out of the car, and we'll take a look at that because it's a little bit different. My last video, I restored the top cover. This that was coming from the overdrive transmission. This one here that you're looking at is original to the car, so we're going to start disassembly of that. Now I cheated a little bit here, and I kind of did a little bit of disassembly, but the first thing we're going to move out is the throwout bearing and the actuator for that. So if you see here in the center, there's this little bolt that goes in the middle there. That is aftermarket. Down here is a large pin bolt. That's original. So those pin bolts have a bad reputation for breaking over time. And as a matter of fact, in my overdrive transmission, it's already broken. So I can't disassemble it that easy. I'm going to have to take a drill or cut or something. I'm not quite sure yet. But what this bolt does is essentially shares the load and cuts down the load by 50% because you got two bolts in there, and it's at 90 degrees opposed to it, so it helps to spread the load of your foot and the hydraulics and everything using on the clutch. So what you do with that is you drill straight through the center of the actuating shaft and put that bolt in, and then at least in this application, the previous owner had put lock wire in between those two bolts, which makes sense to prevent them either one from loosening up. So I've already cut that. So essentially all you really need to do is then undo those bolts. So we'll do this guy in the middle here first, and everything's hand tight. Like I said, I kind of cheated here. I'll do the pin bolt first because that one's loosening up for me. And maybe that's not going to play. Hold on, let me get a wrench. So much for hand tight, I guess. All right, so that pin bolt comes out, and I assume that the hole that he's got drilled through the center of it here, the previous owner, is their own doing to be able to do the lock wire. I don't believe they're originally like that. And then this bolt in particular is a 12-point bolt. So you got to make sure that you got a 12-point socket for it, or in my case, a little wrench. Swear to God, not 3 minutes ago I had this thing completely out of this transmission, and I put it back in for cinematic purposes, thinking that would easily come out. That's what you get for that. All right, so then that's just a standard bolt threaded at the end. And then this arm, if everything is not gunked up or whatever, should just slide straight out. and straight through. And then the fork drops away from that. So on the arm, you can see that they've drilled the hole here through for the aftermarket bolt, and then there's the original pin bolt. And then on the back of the fork that you couldn't see on camera, they've welded a nut to accept this guy, and that helps hold that in. And then your throwout bearing and your throwout bearing sleeve, which I have already split apart and just shown you here, those come right out. So on the other transmission, this sleeve is a little beat up. You can still get them, but there was some damage to that, but this one looks fine. And the throwout bearing looks fine as well. However, if you look at this flat face of this throwout bearing here, that's for the diaphragm style clutches, I believe. Or anyway, one of them are different. Some of them are curved on the top and others are flat like this. And it's just for the diaphragm or the spring type clutches. So now that's it. Also in here, there was a design at some point that changed the design of this fork and how it's retained. The newer design used a spring and a bolt that kind of went through and captured this thing. And this is the older design, however, and it's got bushings where it comes through the transmission case on either side. And into those bushings are grease fittings. I just took the one out on one side and the other one out on this side, and you just grease those bushings, and that maintains everything lubricated. So this is where the shaft would penetrate from the right-hand side of the transmission. So the shaft is coming in from the left and filters or stops right here. So what you might see here is this Zerk fitting. Now the original or the newer designs got rid of the Zerk fitting and went to essentially a capture mechanism in there. Instead of relying on just the clutch fork to keep everything centered, it actually had a bolt that went through. And then these Zerk fittings in here are not in the older design that I have sitting next to me. And this one is pretty well stripped out, or getting there. Probably would still work though. So that obviously just provides some greasing ability, but because it is a different design, I might not be able to use this clutch fork out of this 3800 series or 38,000 series gearbox with the clutch fork if I ever get it out in the other one. Unfortunately, I don't have anything that I can get in here. It doesn't look like it should be bound up, but it obviously is. So I don't have anything that's small enough to get in there to try to grind away. And even if I did, I think I would just end up screwing something up anyway. So you can get these cross shafts. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this one, and just on either side of the fork here, just with a grinding disc and or a cutting wheel, and then be able to get that thing out. I was hoping that I could make enough room to angle it back to get in there, but I can't. So it's going to make a mess, but I shouldn't damage anything. And that Greasy Hands Garage, that they had to do the same thing with one of their clutch shafts. So we're going to do that. All right, that's all there is to that, I guess. As I mentioned, a couple differences here. So this is the newer transmission, release bearing and the collar for it, and this is the older one, and the one that came out of the car. So this is, actually goes like this. This collar just presses into that bearing. It's not a huge, it's not an incredibly tight fit. I did use a press for it. This one was actually a little bit tighter. But to show you a difference here, is you notice the profile on the top of that release bearing, throwout bearing, where it interfaces with the clutch is perfectly flat or close to it. And this guy here has got a concave surface to it. And that's the difference in the clutch design. So in any case, I would have had to swap out the the throwout bearing on the newer transmission, because they had the newer design, modern design diaphragm clutches, unlike the older TR4s that, as opposed to TR4As, which had the diaphragm clutch. The TR4s had the old spring clutches. I can't remember what they're properly called. The other thing is this guy had right here, I don't know how well you can see that, but there's a little defect there, and that was actually bumped up quite a bit. I flattened it out, and what that caused was this bearing should be able to, as you use the throw out and the fork and everything, should be able to freely rotate. Well, what was happening was the little notches here from the little arms from the fork that fit in there, as that would spin around and hit that bent part, it would stop and not allow it to rotate. And what that caused was, especially on this side, a pretty big deformation in there and some wear. Additionally, it has pretty good wear on the forks, and that's not ideal. These the forks here on the other side, because eventually you're going to lose adjustability of the clutch and everything, and maybe if it gets really bad, you're going to not be able to have full clutch throw, and you're going to start grinding some gears. But this one is in much better shape, and this collar is essentially got no damage whatsoever. So I'm going to put all this stuff in the ultrasonic sink, get it cleared up, get a lot of the grease out of it. I will go ahead and get a new throw-out bearing, even though this one doesn't look bad. I'll throw it in the sink anyway, probably. I don't know if it's sealed. I guess we'll find out if it's sealed. But we'll go ahead and get this stuff cleaned up. Well, I have not had this transmission apart at all. It's been sitting in the same spot since I pulled it out of the car, in that corner over there. So we're going to go ahead and pull the top hat off. Just take a look. I got a fan running because it's been pretty nasty here the last couple of days. So if that's distracting, I apologize. All right, so it's a bunch of half-inch bolts here. What do we got? 2, 4, 6, 8 of them. I also have not drained this gearbox. I didn't want to store it without any oil in it. All right, now I got the ultrasonic sink running too, so hopefully, again, it's not really distracting. But I got all these bolts loose. Go ahead, pull this guy off. All right, so mistake number one, all this junk here I should have cleaned off, so I'm going to grab the vacuum real quick and suck that out. Already got some in the gearbox. That was definitely a rookie move there. Rotate the guy. Don't see any cracked teeth or anything. And I can't see all of the leg gear, or the countershaft, whatever the thing is called at the bottom. I can't see all of it because most of it's, or a couple of the gears are submerged in oil. But what I can see looks fine. Reverse looks fine. Doesn't smell burnt or anything like that. So I think we're going to be good here. All right, I'm going to get this stuff cleaned up here. Get the put the gearbox back on and try to shift it around, see how it looks. I can't get those things to move. So that's first. So you're looking in here to engage first gear. Don't see any cuts on that guy, or breaks or anything, so that's good. Go for second. Still looking here. All right, no chip tooth on that guy. Third. All right, so that all looks good to me. Let's see if I can get reverse here. So reverse I can actuate from up here, so we're going to do, put it in neutral, I'll put it into reverse. And sure enough, you can watch that one gear turns different from everyone else. Alright, so as far as I'm concerned, everything looks good in there. I did check out the other gearbox, that looks just as good. So I think what we'll do is, like I said, we'll go ahead and rebuild this guy that I've got in front of me to maintain the original gearbox in the car and add the overdrive unit to it. And that's the way we're going to go. So we're going to leave this guy here like this, put that cover back on so I don't get any stuff in there, and then we'll start tearing it down.